Today we're at Elevate Branson, where people not only receive help, but learn to help themselves. We hope you'll join us at Living Legacies of the Ozarks. Hello and welcome to Living Legacies of the Ozarks. I'm so happy to be here in the home of Elevate Branson, one of my favorite places in the city, and with one of my favorite people, Bryan Stallings, to talk about this wonderful outreach to our neighbors in need. Bryan, it's such a pleasure to be with you and to introduce you, which I'm about to do.
Oh, thank you.
So, from a karaoke recording studio, to an ice cream shop, to an old-time photo studio, to a pizzeria where their tagline was "free box with every pizza," which, by the way, was mentioned by Jay Leno on The Tonight Show, to a gift wrapping operation. Gift wrapping?
Yeah. Gift wrapping a balloon, gift wrapping a can, Christmas time stuff. You could tell I couldn't decide what I wanted to be when I grew up.
You've had a lot of experience.
I have.
But I'm sure, looking back, that all of it prepared you for where you are now.
Absolutely. You can just see where God had his hand in that and preparing me for what I'm doing now.
Well, I ain't done yet, so we're going to have to continue. A gift wrapping operation and other enterprises, Bryan has lived the life and spirit of an entrepreneur. But when Bryan became a single dad, he realized that he needed to spend more time with his young family. So left the entrepreneurial world and entered the corporate world as a store manager and sales rep, followed by a stint in real estate. Then Bryan met and married a wonderful woman named Amy. And soon thereafter, God placed a burden on both of their hearts to help their many neighbors in need living in Branson's extended stay motels. In November 2008, they hosted their first Thanksgiving meal together, and it was a great success. And Elevate Branson, formerly known as Jesus Was Homeless, was born. Since then, Elevate Branson has expanded the scope of its services, programs, and impact on our community, offering a variety of resources to thousands of our neighbors each year. Elevate Branson works to empower our neighbors to reach their full potential through weekly outreach, workforce development, training, affordable health care, children's programming, and even more to bring a sense of belonging to the often marginalized in our community. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to this program today. Thank you, Bryan. I appreciate it.
You need to set your bar a lot higher if you consider me one of your heroes.
Well, it's true. And wherever the bar is, that still stands.
Well, thank you.
For any of us who have participated in any way on one of your teams, whether it's those sandwiches on Thursday night or whether it's being a mentor at Elevate Work, it's always a greater blessing to those who come in for us than it is for anything that we might do. So thank you for the opportunity to be able to serve.
Well, thanks for serving.
Well, as we start, why don't you just tell us, and I've given some of your history, but could you take us back to maybe that first Thanksgiving and just take us forward with what you've done, and Bryan, what's your vision of what's to come, all of those things.
Yeah. So that first Thanksgiving was really God just putting it on our heart we needed to do something, and we didn't know what something was, and we landed on last minute, kind of trying to ignore God first, right? Because somebody else can do it. I'm not qualified to do it, was my initial thought, And God was kind of like that buzzing gnat in your ear that you couldn't get rid of. So 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, we put out flyers, and we thought that there was probably a couple of motels where people were living in, and we would bust them in and have a traditional Thanksgiving dinner. And what we learned was that there were 25 of these motels at the time.
Did you know that before this event?
No, didn't.
You thought there might be a couple?
I thought there was a couple. And what would happen was many of those living in the motels had this really amazing sense of community with one another. And so when we'd pass out the flyers, they would say, hey, be sure to invite such and such family. They're at this motel. And we'd go to that motel, and then somebody there would send us to another motel, and by the end of the night, there were 25 of these motels.
And how many people did you reach, you think, that night through invitations?
Oh, probably 800.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, several hundred people, and we didn't have a big turnout because, like I said, it was last minute. But we had 50 people show up to this first Thanksgiving dinner, and you know, you kind of think about that, like you would have to be either really willing or, you know, to get on a school bus, right, and get a ride to a place to have a Thanksgiving dinner from people that just stopped by 2 weeks earlier. It's like, you know, what are they really doing? You know?
Right.
And so, but we had 50 people come, which was great because we were able to then sit down with people and hear their stories. And so we had these typical, you know, stereotypical glasses on that everybody was going to be lazy, they didn't want to work, they were addicts or alcoholics, you know, that was just kind of the perception that we had. And when we got to sit down with people and hear their story, what we learned was that they were just like you and I. They just didn't have a support system around them when they had an explosion happen in their life. So maybe they'd moved here for a job and the transmission went out of their car and they didn't have a support system to be able to get them to work, and they lost their job and they ended up in a motel. Or they had a medical issue, you know, and didn't have anybody there to step in and help them take care of themselves, and they ended up in a motel. And so that was the takeaway from it. And the other thing was they were incredibly appreciative and grateful that not so much that there was food, although they were appreciative for that, but I think just that somebody noticed or cared, because when you live in a motel, you're kind of hidden. You're not like a homeless individual on a park bench or under a bridge. You're actually, you know, you're working, you know, because you have to pay rent in this motel, but you're kind of the hidden poor, that is what we would say, you know, and you know, our neighbors who are struggling, and so they were just appreciative that I think somebody would take the time to notice them.
You know, it's interesting what you said. You're right. People come in with so many stereotypes, always about other people. Yeah. Anybody who looks different in any respect, there's always some kind of narrative that we bring to that. But what I'm hearing you say is that when you actually heard their stories, you realized we're all sharing the same narrative.
Absolutely. And the difference really was just that support system that they had. You know, if my transmission goes out, I have friends and family that I can either borrow a car from or would be willing to give me a ride for a couple of weeks until the transmission was fixed. These individuals did not have that support system. And so when that sole vehicle is your to and from for work and it's taken away and you have no other means of getting to work, employers kind of frown on that. And so they would lose their job and they'd end up in these situations.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. So you said, you know, that we're talking about the working, I guess the working poor is one way we could say it. I'm not sure that that's the best way to say it.
Right.
But you know, yeah. And so what are they doing? What kind of jobs do people have that leave them able to pay their motel rent, but not able to, say, move forward?
Right. Well, you know, it's the positive, negative side of a lot of situations. So Branson is a great tourism destination. Unfortunately, it's about our only industry. You know, we don't have any manufacturing here, so most of our jobs are what we'd call service industry jobs. They're your waiters and your waitresses, they're your ushers, your ticket takers at theaters and attractions. And you know, if you want to charge $100 for your show, then you can pay those individuals more, but you may not have visitors buy your tickets, right? Because you price yourself out.
Right.
And same at a restaurant. If you want to sell a hamburger for $35, then you can afford to pay more. And so most of our jobs are minimum wage, you know, low paying jobs. And so it's just enough to barely make ends meet, or enough to hang on. And then, you know, factor in inflation nowadays, and you really see people falling off this cliff. We call it a welfare cliff, and they're just falling off.
You know, I'm glad that you said that, because I think it's a kind of another stereotype or another projection that we can put on employers. Well, they just pay people more, right? But they're operating on a thin edge themselves. It's not that easy.
Right. And it's a delicate balance, because even if they're able to pay more, we also have a lack of affordable housing. So let's say they can pay a few dollars more. Where do these individuals go live, because we don't have affordable housing in the area? And the housing that we do have is priced out. I mean, employers would have to pay so much that they wouldn't be able to operate their business.
And the most affordable housing is further out of town, which makes the transportation more of an acute problem.
It's kind of this perfect storm of transportation, housing, and workforce.
So this is a question I'd really like to ask you, and it comes from that first night that you went out, and you're talking to some 800 people, or giving out 800 invitations, and then you're becoming more aware of the reality of these people in their situations, in their homes. How did you keep from being overwhelmed?
At times it is overwhelming, but I also have to remember that I'm not Jesus, and I can't save people. I can help them the best I can, but at the end of the day, it's not my job to save them. That's Jesus's job. And hopefully he'll equip us with the tools necessary. And I think humanity is resilient, right? I mean, a lot of these individuals had made it to this point without me and without, any assistance from us, and they were able to continue on. But just the brokenness itself can be overwhelming.
Yeah, but I like what you said. I can see that that's overwhelming. I just kind of want to revisit what you said, because you said they made it so far. I mean, what you're recognizing when you meet someone face to face, not stereotyped to whatever,
right,
then you're recognizing their inherent dignity. John Baltus was talking about that as being something that he believes is really woven into the character of Ozark Mountain Country, right? Yeah. That it's a shared sense of our inherent dignity. And I think from what I hear you saying, and I won't elevate you too high, but you recognize that in these folks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you learn.
Living Legacies of the Ozarks is sponsored by Ozark Mountain Legacy.
You know what? There's so much I want to ask you, and some of it is really chronological. It's like, okay, you had the first night, and you recognize there's a greater need. Why do we take that for a while?
Yeah.
And just maybe you could give us an overview of how you and Amy have arrived here.
How it kind of got out of hand.
Yeah, that's right. How things went completely like a balloon.
Yeah,
right?
so Amy and I were working full-time jobs. I was working for the local phone company at the time. She was working for a tourism ticket sale employer, and she was on seasonal layoff, which is another thing that happens around here. People get laid off during the wintertime. And after that first Thanksgiving meal, our stereotypes were blown away, right? Because we realized people were just like us. They just didn't have that support system. They were grateful and appreciative. And we couldn't wait another year to do something again. And so we landed on, hey, let's just go and let's just create and build this community with people, which is what all of us are really looking for, is community with one another.
That's right.
And so we started with packing some sack lunches in our house. There were 48 meals, and I always get the question, why 48? Was that like a biblical number or something? No, the hamburger buns were sold in packages of 16.
Right.
So we packed these 48 meals, and we just went to a motel and knocked on people's door and offered them this free sack lunch, and then we were just able to engage with them. And then from that, we started identifying needs. Had a gentleman that said he had applied for 20 jobs and hadn't heard anything. And I'm thinking, even during the recession in Branson, we still needed frontline workers. We still needed help. And why was this individual not hearing back from potential employers? And I realized he had his best Budweiser shirt on and cut off jeans, and nobody had told him the things that he needed to do to interview successfully or to fill out an application properly, or what not to put on there and what to put on there, and maybe how to word those things. And so we brought a program called Jobs for Life, which was a national program, and we brought that to help teach those soft skills to individuals in our community that may not have had a mom or a dad or a coach or a teacher model that for them.
Now, when was that? What year was that?
That would have been in 2013.
2013, and that's when you were back on the strip.
Yep.
Kind of below the...
We were right across from Walmart on
Yep,
the
that's
strip
right.
in that shopping center on the backside. It was 3,500 square feet, and we went from 3,500 square feet then to 17,000 in 2017 in the facility we're at now, and we feel like we've outgrown this now.
Really?
With the programs and services. So yeah, it's just crazy.
So are you going to move again?
No.
You're going to make do?
We're just going to expand where we're at.
Yeah,
So
that's right. That's so good. So that's Elevate. What's Elevate work now? It's Jobs
Yep.
for Life then.
Yep.
What other programs did you introduce along the way?
So everything's been really a learning curve as well as listening to community. And so what we recognized out of that was that we can teach them the soft skills, they get the job, but if they don't have access to health care, they may not be the best performing employee because they're dealing with a health issue. And so we created an event that we called Meet the Doc, where we brought in different healthcare providers to start addressing some of those concerns. And then we tried to fill in the gaps. So transportation was one. So if we could get people an appointment with Faith Community Health here or Cox Hospital, we would provide the transportation to get them to that appointment. And so we really recognized health was an issue. Dental health was also an issue. So we did the same thing with getting people to a dentist. And then we also realized that we needed to reach families holistically. So we started just focusing on the adult members, but then adults have kids, and we needed to address kids. And so with our Elevate Work program, we created the same program, but at a kids level.
Oh, really?
So that mom and dad, when they're going through Elevate Work, the kids are going through the same thing, and they can connect at home with what they learned in class.
Now, how long have you done that?
We've done that probably for 6 or 7 years now.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not realize that.
So
That's fantastic.
So that's been neat to see. And then when we moved into this facility, we were able to bring on a therapy dog for those kids as well. We've created Theo, the therapy dog.
Theo's wonderful.
Yeah, and created a sensory room for those kids so that they can decompress. Any of those calming spaces for those kiddos is great. We have an after-school program now. And then we have some big stuff that's coming. We're in the process of developing a tiny house development to bring affordable housing here, a transportation program to provide transportation that really gives people freedom and independence and not just riding on a route system. We have a program here called Elevate Connections. We believe so much that everybody has potential, that they were created as God's masterpiece, that we want to get them into the workforce as soon as possible, or at least with the confidence and dignity that work brings.
Yes.
And so we help people get their IDs, their birth certificates, their social security cards.
Goodness.
But we also have a program where they can work for things and earn those things. So a lot of times we think of nonprofits as being the place to go for something for free.
Right.
And we don't believe in that at all. We believe when we do that, we rob people of dignity and value. And so let me give you an example of how that looks. We had an individual come in. We have a great thrift store here that's supported by the community through their generosity of giving us items, and we can sell those items, and that helps fund what we do. And so we had an individual come that was needing a pair of pants for a job interview. And she was embarrassed to have to ask. You could see that she just had this kind of guilt and shame look, and her head was down, and she quietly asked, "Hey, is there any way I could get a pair of pants for my job interview?" And I said, "No, but here's what you can do. We are actually packing meals that we're going to take out today, and if you would volunteer to work packing those meals, I will give you reward points so then you can go down to the thrift store and shop for those pants. So she did. She spent an hour, 2 hours packing those meals. And here's what happened, Hayden. You could see her head come up and her shoulders come back because she'd earned what she was getting. And she said, well, I'm even gonna come back and get a pair of tennis shoes for my child. You know, so I mean, it just when you can earn it, there's so much dignity and value in that.
You know, Bryan, that's such a great story. And you know, kind of go back to the purpose of this program, Living Legacies of the Ozarks.
Yep.
Right? What is it that, and it's a constant kind of search, really. What are the values? What are the things that make Ozark Mountain Country special? And we can look at the environment, which I wish people took better care of.
Right.
But we can look at the lakes and the hills. Yeah. But it always comes back to the people. What is it? And I think that you put your finger on something. It is that our inherent dignity is connected to what we do and to not receiving something for nothing. I mean, that's kind of an Ozark trait, right?
Yep.
We're not just going to take a handout. We want
Right.
to work for it. And when you think about it, like College of the Ozarks, right? Same principle.
Yep.
You can get an education here, and it's not going to cost you anything.
Right.
Except your labor, except your work that you're going to invest. Yeah. And so maybe when you pinpoint something like that, that is central.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and you know, I often hear when people retire, many times they'll say they're busier now than they ever were when they were working because now they have the freedom to give and serve and work in different capacities.
Speaking of that, I'm glad you mentioned that. So is it difficult to get volunteers? Could you use more people?
We can always use more volunteers.
I guess that's what I'm really going for.
You bet.
What if you could name one program where you needed more volunteers, more people to say, I'll live the gospel like I claim to believe and actually do it, right? Yeah. So if some of those people actually moved into that, what program would you?
You know, I would say it's with our Elevate outreach program. It's on Thursday nights. Okay. And that is our first connection point to our neighbors in need. And so we will pack about anywhere from 700 to 1,000 meals. We'll go out to the area motels and apartment complexes, and really we're just trying to build a relationship with individuals. Because here's the deal, nobody wants advice from you until they know how much you care, right? They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. But if we can see them week in and week out, because that one meal is not gonna hold off hunger or starvation for very long, right? After you eat it, you're going to be hungry again. But what it does is it allows us to begin the relationship process. And then once we build that relationship process, we get to know them. We know what their needs are, what the support services are that they don't have, and start pointing them to the right resources.
Fantastic.
And so Thursday night's always a challenge for us because it can be cold, it can be hot. Yeah. And sometimes it's physical because you're going up and down stairs at motels but if you want to actually get in the trenches and be on God's front lines, that's the place to come and be.
What time should they be here?
If they can be here anytime between 5 and 5:30, and you don't have to sign up ahead of time, you just show up, and usually they're done about 8:30.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
So you're looking at basically a 3-hour
About 3
commitment.
hours, yep.
To build relationships with people.
With your neighbors, right?
With
in
your
neighbors. Community.
I know. We forget that, don't we?
Yeah.
Why do we do that?
Well,
Why? That's a question.
I think the suburbs changed everything, because I'm guilty of this. I live in a subdivision, and, it's easy to hit the garage door button as you pull in. You pull your car in, you shut the garage behind you, and you don't talk to your neighbors anymore. And so that's one of the things I mentioned, our tiny house development. That's one of the things that we're changing in that. So our tiny houses will have big porches on them. They'll only be about 5 feet apart. So you'll either like or hate your neighbor, I guess, right?
But you'll know your neighbor.
But you'll know your neighbor.
You'll know them.
But what we know, at least in the recovery world, is that people have greater success in recovery when they have community. And so when you have, and it's biblical too, right? When you have somebody, if you stumble and fall, and you have somebody there to pick you up, I mean, that's success, right? If nobody's there, you're done. You just fall.
You're by yourself.
So we really are structuring it to build community with one another.
My dad, one of his favorite verses was, two can do more than twice as much as one.
Yeah.
He found it in Ecclesiastes or somewhere.
Right, yeah.
But that's exciting. So where are you now in the tiny home village?
Well, we're hoping to break ground January, February. So we're getting
Wow.
close. We have 32 homes have been fully funded. The ultimate goal is to have 70. We also want to have outdoor amphitheater and movie theater so that the community at large can come and be a part of this. And then we hope to have 3 micro businesses in there as well, so that we can teach and continue to teach and train workforce development.
And that will help sustain
What
Elevate
we're doing.
Branson too at the same time.
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
fantastic.
So we'll have a marketplace and thrift store. We're hoping to do paint on pottery. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all, but it's pretty cool. And then
no kill? I mean, is it just paint on and then it's done, or do you fire it?
No, you fire it.
You still fire it?
Yeah, we'll
Okay,
fire
all
it.
right.
We may have to, like if somebody's here on vacation, it might have to be shipped to them or
Okay,
something.
all right.
But yeah.
Can I give another shout out to Elevate?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you guys have got I'm probably going to offend somebody, but you've got the best pizza in town.
I like to
Frank
think so.
does a great job.
We have Frank's Pizza. He makes a great pizza, sandwich, salad. We also have Cookies by Frank, where this is a great time of year. You can put your logo, your company logo, or a saying, or whatever image or anything you want to put on a cookie, and be able to provide that at parties and things like that. So
That's fantastic.
It's pretty
I didn't
cool.
know that.
Yeah.
I'm more of a pizza fan than a cookie fan, but that's
Well, for parties,
but no, it's a great
company
idea.
parties.
And you got the coffee.
We have the coffee shop, the coffee that lifts you up. The Hub, great food for a great cause. We're all about slogans here.
I tell you what. Well, your logo I think is fantastic. You got the homes, but they're going up.
Going up.
That's very cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Spot on.
Super excited about the transportation program that we're going to launch in the spring.
Which is?
Well, it's going to be Elevate Rides. It's a moped type program, but it's only $5 a day to be able to have your own transportation to go anywhere you want to.
Well, I got to say, now I don't know if moped, because I've seen these things, I don't know if it does justice to these machines that I've seen. I mean, they are sleek.
Yeah, they are. They look great. I mean, they'll be brand new scooters for people, and we'll train people, have scooter school. We'll help them get licensed, registered. The payment will include their insurance and their training and their maintenance, and I think it's going to change lives.
Bryan, tell me, how else can people help Elevate Branson fulfill their mission?
Well, I think the biggest way is just to come and join us, partner with us, right? People hate to be asked for money oftentimes, right? And people hate to ask for money.
They do.
And so I look at it as this: it's not. We don't want just your money. We want your partnership with us and join in what God's already doing through Elevate Branson for our neighbors here in our community. And so I believe that Elevate Branson and its programs and services and all the future, it's already fully funded by God, right? It's just they won't give God his own bank account. So so people have to look in their account and see how much of God's money is in there.
Right.
But really, we want people to be a part of it, to experience that community, to lift their neighbors up, because we are so disconnected from one another, yet we're so connected through social media, but that's not relationships. We're missing the face-to-face relationships.
That's right. Well, and like I said earlier, I can attest to the deep pleasure of the relationships that are built here. And it is so reciprocal. It's not this sort of hierarchical, I'm reaching down. It's very much, we are all in this together.
Yep.
We all serve the same God.
We're alongside with you.
We're alongside with you. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's so clear in Elevate Branson. And it's built in. Thank you so much. I really appreciate
bet.
your
Thank
time
you.
and everything and sharing the mission of Elevate Branson. And just know that God is going to continue to bless you in this ministry in the days ahead.
It's just, the future's bright, and I'm excited.
Thank you, Bryan. I
Thanks.
appreciate it. And thank you for joining us here at Living Legacies of the Ozarks. Have a great day.
Living Legacies of the Ozarks is sponsored by Ozark Mountain Legacy.